So today, the nitrogen cycle. What is, how do? What is the nitrogen cycle? How to make it happen in your aquarium? Everything about it, all about the bacteria and making the nitrogen cycle go faster and getting it up started quicker, or understanding the importance of the cycle and how you can cultivate the bacteria faster. This is all what we'll be covering today. So it's a lot, and a lot of people, when they go to a fish store, they buy fish and they buy a new tank and they take it home and they're excited about it. But a lot of people don't tell them, unless it's a nice, good store, about the nitrogen cycle, which is basically what keeps your fish alive in a non-toxic environment. So just imagine, like, if you had to live in a bathroom but you could never flush the toilet, it's kind of like that. So the nitrogen cycle is like your flushing of all the bad pollutants in the water. So I'll explain all of this. I'll do it on the computer. I'll show you guys information about it all, how it all works, what you can do to make it go easy and to not, like, it's not hard, it's nothing crazy ridiculous, but it's really important for aquariums and having a thriving fish tank and just the beginning of it. If you can get a nitrogen cycle over with, you're already most of the way there to having a successful aquarium. So I'll go ahead and I'll just roll over to that and I'll get you guys figuring that out. Well, hello. So here I already kind of drew out the nitro bros and the nitrogen cycle for some of this material. So I kind of included some things that'll make this whole learning process kind of easier to explain, and I'll draw out the nitrogen cycle. But a little introduction to the nitro bros, and that's going to be nitrosomonas, which is going to convert ammonia to nitrite, and then nitrobacter is the bacteria that converts nitrite to nitrate. For those that care about this little fact, they are rod-shaped gram-negative bacteria, and one word that describes them is chemoautotroph. So to break this word down, chemo means that they take in inorganic molecules as a source of energy. So inorganic would be, like, for example, you have your NH3, which is ammonia, nitrite, NO2, these are inorganic. So they consume this inorganic molecule, and them being auto, so they're self-driving, meaning that they don't need to go eat something or consume a thing. They are able to take in the molecule, and kind of like a plant in photosynthesis, they're self-driving in that sense. So plants take molecules in, and then they use that as energy source to further photosynthetic process. And the same kind of aspect as far as auto part of this word goes, they also take in the inorganic molecules and they convert that into energy by themselves without the need of going and hunting something down. And then troph is just kind of how this energy is obtained. So when I say a chemoautotroph, you know that these guys they consume inorganic molecules for energy. Now, these are the nitro bros, and I'll go into a whole thing about specific things about them later, but first things first, like, what is the nitrogen cycle and how can I explain that? So basically, you have a little fish, right? So there we go. Boom. Let's make it anatomically correct with a smiley face. So that little fish goes in the aquarium, and what happens is this little fish poops, right? So that right there is your ammonia. That's where it all starts. So that's just freely hanging in the water column, right? And what happens is this is supposed to reach a certain bacteria, which would be nitrosomonas. So this is in the water, and then hopefully it'll go into a filter or a place in which that you have an established colony of nitrosomonas. And what happens is these little dudes, right, they're in the filter, they're doing their thing, living life, waiting for stuff to come by. All right, so the NH3 goes into them like that, and then what comes out is your NH or NO2 minus, which is your nitrite. So from there, you've already got half of it done. So the reason I colored these like they are with ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate is that ammonia is the most toxic. So anything 2 parts per million ammonia in an aquarium can be very deadly, and anything beyond that can destroy aquariums. It can burn the skin of fish, and this is why it's really important to have a cycled aquarium that can take this load and convert it down to less harmful molecules. And the first part of that job is done by nitrosomonas. So what they do is they take that ammonia from the fish poop, and in your filter somewhere, they consume that ammonia and they convert it to nitrite. So then we go from there, right? In the same filter media, basically, you have these same dudes right here, which are going to be, and again, they're rod shaped, so I'm just drawing them like this. I know it's a very beautiful drawing. So that nitrite comes into these guys, and they consume that, those molecules, and they spit out nitrate. So at this point, you've done a good job at having the fish make waste, that waste be converted into a less harmful waste, so NO2 minus. And then from there, it goes to another bacteria, which these will both, you don't see them obviously, and they'll both be in the filter media and on bags or on surfaces of the aquarium. And what happens is this guy takes it from here, they're bros, so this guy does this job and his brother takes on the next one, and then it's boom, NO3 minus, and you're doing good now. So from here, usually if it's a filter setting, then this will be taken out, so that will go to what we call, if you're doing a water change, let's just do water change. Excuse my handwriting. And that will actually, let's say you had, 10 nitrate. Well, after the water change, you've diluted that to 5 nitrate. Even if, that's just vague numbers, but the purpose of a water change is to take out this and other parts of the water and remineralize and establish the water. And you dilute pollutants in the water. So even if you're going through the cycle, let's say you don't have you're trying to do it without a fish and you're cycling the aquarium and you get a really high ammonia spikes, you can do a water change to dilute that. And one thing that was really fun to hear that I thought was hilarious was this one guy I'm subscribed to, and he says dilution is the solution to your pollution. And it's so stupid, dorky, but I love it because it makes a lot of sense, and it's a really easy thing to say and get the understanding of this process. So it's nothing really crazy. So basically these guys will colonize your aquarium without you really having to do too much. You can start a cycle faster and establish them better, but what these guys do, so they will, it's kind of crazy. They're like the heroes that you never see because they're there. They kind of just come out of nowhere and they exist whenever you have ammonia source in your water column, and then they'll convert that over. But so things like, decor, let's say you have like a rock in your aquarium, or let's say you have, inside of a bag in the fish tank filter, you have like a bunch of media that's supposed to house things, or let's say, on like the surface, on the glass walls of your aquarium, these little dudes will actually colonize surfaces. So one thing that a lot of companies try and take advantage of, or when they make media, is that it's very porous and it has, a lot of surface area, because the more surface area you have, the more bacteria can colonize and convert that over. So you have a lot of surface area on this rock, so you have water kind of pass over the rock, the bacteria does its thing, and then you get that nitrate coming out. Same thing with the filter media. And the idea of filter media is just to have surface area for the bacteria to colonize. So this isn't anything crazier new. A lot of people think that if you just pull water from an established aquarium and you put it in a new aquarium, that it's cycled, and that's not very true. These bacteria actually, they have a sticky substance. So what they do is they adhere to a surface. So let's say on this same rock, right? Just let's say this is the surface of the rock. The bacteria, it's kind of like this. I'll use this one, makes it easier. So they're on the rock, right? But they secrete this kind of like mucus that adheres them to the rock. So they don't swim or free float in the water column. I mean, I'm sure there might be a little bit there, but where they really are is on surfaces, and that's where they let things pass through them and convert waste over. And that's their job, and that's how they are. So it's important that you cycle an aquarium properly and you don't just pull water from an old tank, because then all you're doing is just bringing the, I guess, pollution of that aquarium over to this new aquarium, and you're not really doing much there. But this is way simpler than it looks. It's just fish poops, makes ammonia. Ammonia goes to first bacteria, nitrite. Ammonia goes to second bacteria, nitrate, water change, you're good. And that's the purpose of a water change, just to dilute things. Now, one other thing to talk about as far as just the nitrogen cycle goes is that some people will take, they'll take media that they have from an existing aquarium and they'll plop it into a new tank, and they'll say like, well, it's cycled, so I'm done now. But that's not the case. Just because you pull media from an old tank and put in a new tank, it just means that there's some bacteria in that new aquarium that can do the job. But what happens is, if you maximize surface area, let's say you get like a bunch of, I don't know, rocks or a lot of filters, and you get like 10 filters for this one aquarium because you just want all this bacteria to do all its job. It's not how that works. So the bacteria will only, they'll only colonize to reach the need of an aquarium. So let's say you have this much need, right? And the bacteria is here from the seeded media that you brought in, right? So that means that this much can be converted over to the nitrate, but you still have all this that's not being taken care of. So you have to colonize the bacteria to reach that need, to fill that gap, and then that can properly be taken over. So you have to, this is why you do water tests with, and there's a lot of simple and cheaper test kits that you can use to make sure you're doing things right and however much ammonia is in the aquarium is being converted into nitrate. But one thing to point out is that, like, just because you have, let's say you have 1,000 rocks, right? Or let's say you have 10 filters on one aquarium, that doesn't mean all 10 filters will be filled with bacteria, because the same goes vice versa, right? So just because you have, this much bacteria, you still only have this level of waste. So all of this will just die off, and you'll have that balance where it's enough bacteria to convert the waste over. And that's it. After this point right here, where everything's equal and there's a balance between how much waste is being brought into the aquarium by fish poop and etc., being converted into nitrates eventually, anything past that is just, they're all competing for that same amount of waste and material. So you wouldn't have 10 filters filled with bacteria. You'd have maybe 10 filters, maybe a couple of them have a little bit of bacteria, maybe one's actually got it all going, maybe most of the bacteria is just in the aquarium, but you would have a lot of mechanical filtration. And that sizing filters for what you need in a system is another talk for another day. But this is the point here, is that here's your nitrogen cycle: fish poop, bacteria, water change, good deal. They adhere to surfaces. The more surfaces you have inside of an aquarium or in a filter allows for more bacteria to colonize. Aside from that, infinite surface area isn't going to make infinite bacteria. They're just going to reach the need of the waste. And once they reach that need, there won't be any more coming in. Unless, obviously there will be die-off, and then that die-off will create new bacteria to come in, new generations. But this is really it. So I'm trying to make it simple. I know I explained a lot, but it's nothing crazy. It's not like you have to be a scientist and you do a minor in chemistry or major in biology or anything like that. These guys actually colonize an aquarium of their own accord by themselves. They'll just appear. It's really crazy cool. And first, these guys will come up. So basically, when you're cycling an aquarium at first, right, you'll dose, let's say, ammonia. So at first, you'll have high ammonia, and then that'll drop. And as ammonia drops, you'll start to get a spike of nitrite. And then as nitrite kind of plateaus, eventually that'll come down. And when that comes down, you'll have a nitrate spike. And then that might come down a little bit, but it'll kind of reach like a median point. And what's happening here, when you see this happening, is that right here, this spot basically, well, I mean, I guess all of this would be included as well, but this spot is like the breaking point of the Nitrosomonas colonizing the aquarium and reaching the need, right? They hit that need, they're able to convert this much over and see that same peak over, and they convert it. And then you have the same thing happening over here for these guys. You have they're kind of starting to pollinize. They're starting to populate, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then here's a breaking point to where they're like, I got this now, and they're doing their job. And then you're solid, you're good. So this is what you look for when you're cycling a brand new aquarium, is that let's say you dose ammonia, and then it'll start to go down, and then it'll peak with nitrite. That'll kind of decrease with a peak in nitrate, and then this is kind of where you have your cycle. Like this is what happens, And that's really it. It's nothing crazy. No, I've said that like 5 times, and I keep adding things onto this, but I'm really trying to simplify this, and I'm trying to make sure everyone gets all the information that there is available to them. So this is essentially the nitrogen cycle. This is what happens in an aquarium all the time. This is the backbone and life system of a properly established aquarium, and this is what makes an aquarium work and thrive, Nitrites, if you have a planted tank, nitrites will be consumed by plants, nitrates will be consumed by plants, and then those plants, will continue to keep the water even cleaner, and they'll have a greater dilution of nitrates because they'll be consuming them. And so that's why planted tanks are so good. But you don't really need plants or anything like that. You can always dilute things as the water changes. So that's it as far as the nitrogen cycle goes. But this is also about getting to know the nitro bros. So some really cool things about them that I thought I could point out actually was this. So here's a little thing about the nitrogen cycle. Here, before I get to the next part of this, is basically, well, that tab I just closed, by the way. I was just trying to see how I could explain that easier. But so this is what I follow when I do a brand new aquarium cycle. It's Dr. Tim's Aquatics. So he actually sells one and only nitrifying bacteria, and it's actually the natural nitrifying bacteria. One thing to note is that some companies have their own kind of strands of bacteria, so you kind of want to know, and this is, I guess, more of an advanced topic to some people, but knowing what you want as far as it goes, because some companies, maybe they have good strains of nitrifying bacteria, but it's their own personal strain, and if anything happens to your tank, you have to buy their specific bottle and their colony and to keep that thriving and going, which is why I personally prefer natural nitrifying bacteria that I can get from Dr. Tim's, I can get from other companies. I'm not reliant upon one bottle or one brand. But Dr. Tim is amazing, and I also use the ammonium chloride. So I dose ammonia in my aquarium to reach a certain level, and then I let that get converted over, and I test and test and test. I test water once a day, every day when I'm doing a cycle, and then when I see that it goes down, I have to feed the bacteria, right? Because they eat the inorganic molecules, so I give them the more ammonium chloride, so they can continue to eat that and convert it over, and then you get your nitrites and your nitrates. But this is what I follow, and he has it breaking down a couple days. This is assuming you use his bottle, but you don't have to use the bottle to get the same response. You can just dose ammonia and get this happening. My cycle didn't take 7 to 8 days. It took almost a month, and that's because I run a cold water tank, so it's a lot. The generation time for the bacteria is like almost 50% in colder water. But we'll talk about that here too. But I'll link this page down below, so anyone that wants to kind of look at this and get a good idea of what to do and how to do it themselves, they can come here too, and they can see the same materials that I use to get my cycle going if my video isn't too helpful to them. And here's a great page that I found on the nitrifying bacteria. I'm not going to go and read this whole thing. I'll link it below for anyone that is curious about it, but I'll touch on some particular topics of the bacteria. So this is the thing that is important to know. So optimum growth of nitrifying bacteria, so Nitrosomonas and Nitrobacter, these little dudes, is 77 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. So at this temperature, they will be spawning, growing, and separating much easier. So this is kind of the temperature that I keep my aquarium at, because I'm going to be doing an axolotl aquarium. So my growth rate is 50%. So it takes a lot longer for them to kind of reach that point. And then it's even more further down, but you shouldn't have to worry about anything like this. And they die off at these temperatures. pH is really variable, but they have optimal ranges. You have to worry about that. One thing though is that dissolved oxygen levels in an aquarium allows them to have better nitrification rates. So what that means is the more dissolved oxygen in the aquarium, the better they are at doing their job. So they are absolutely slow growers compared to a lot of other bacteria, but they are fantastic at their job compared to other bacteria too. So it's kind of like the trade-off. Like, yeah, they take a little longer to populate, but they're really good at their job. So one thing you can do to add dissolved oxygen to an aquarium is agitate the surface. So more oxygen. So like a bubbler doesn't actually add oxygen directly into an aquarium, but what it does do is it agitates the surface of the water, which allows for more surface area, and allows for more oxygen to enter the top and kind of dissolve into the water column. So that's one way you can increase levels. There's ways to measure it, but you really just agitate the surface if that's it. You don't have to be all crazy about this. Salinity micronutrients. Lighting, and they are photosensitive, so using like UV light and stuff would be kind of harsh on them, but it's better to wait until afterwards that they're good. And then, so this is the most important thing, is that chlorine and chloramines. So your tap water is treated and usually has chlorine, sometimes it has chloramines. What this does is that it kills bacteria, and this is meant to keep you healthy, and so you don't eat, when you drink your tap water, you don't drink a lot of bacteria that can harm your body. But it does kill bacteria, and it's good at its job, so it will kill the bacteria in your aquariums. This is why you should treat your tap water before or during a water change, so you're not killing off the bacteria. So usually people will turn off their filters and stuff, and they'll do a water change, and then they will treat the water and turn the filters back on, so that way the bacteria aren't being exposed to anything. But that's really it. And so this is one thing I really liked about it too. Here's some companies that claim to contain true nitrifying bacteria. So if you want to do any of these, like there's Colony from ATM. I love these guys. These guys are so cool. Proline, I haven't done anything with them. Aquatic Solutions, this is what I use. And then Fritzheim is cool from what I hear. I also use Tetra Safe Start. I'll show you that, how I did it, or what I started my aquarium with. Here's some pictures of these guys. They're really kind of cool little dudes. But that's really that. It's nothing crazy. One thing to note is that when you are you're looking to start an aquarium, like, if you want to get your nitrogen cycle done with really fast, you want to get it through, you can do things like, heat up the water in the tank up to like, 84 degrees. That way you have maximum, you have like their best spawn time or generation times, sorry. That's something you could do to have growth rates be higher. Aside from that, considering your goals, like, do you want natural bacteria, or do you want to, rely on a company that has maybe really good bacteria? Some people like don't ever think about that. It's something that I do. Maybe it's not super important, but one thing that I want to note though is if you do have to do a water change while you're establishing a cycle, so not like when it's all done, but let's say these guys are still populating and you get really high nitrites, but so you need to lower that by doing a water change. I use things like TetraSafe Plus, because what it does is, instead of, let's say this is like your ammonia, right? Which this is obviously not. This is not how I draw that molecule. But if this is your ammonia, what happens is Prime would completely bind that, right, and kind of lock it up. And that's good for an established system, because you're kind of getting rid of ammonia and chloramines. But you remember you want to feed the bacteria in a new cycle, right? So let's say this is your ammonia right here. What happens is something like TetraSafe, TetraSafe, it actually cleaves this bond, and so the ammonia is still in the water column for these guys to eat up. And that's that. Like, it's only really important in the sense of like when you're doing a cycle, that way that you're not binding the ammonia source, that you're giving them ammonia that they can still consume over, and that's really it. It's nothing ridiculously crazy. There's things you can do, like I think the best thing is to add ammonia yourself, so ammonium chloride, and then dose that in a tank and then test and let it take its course, like this one. Some people do a fish in cycle that can burn the fish. That's also a reason that fish die, because they're not in an established tank, so they get really stressed and their immune systems decrease and they're just being hurt all the time by living in that tank and everything like that. I don't recommend fish in cycle. I've done it before. I'm sure everyone has. That's good at their job, professional at it. Everyone's done that. Whether they think it's a mistake or it's fine, that's up to them and their belief system. But I don't like it. I prefer to not harm any fish or put any fish through that, and to do this and then bring them into an established system. And then things like the Twin Star algae nano inhibitor are really cool, because they actually, they directly add oxygen to the aquarium by doing that big mist cloud from my last video that you saw. So if you want to increase dissolved oxygen and you want to make that purchase, then that's something you could do too. If if your goal is just like, I want to make the cycle go as fast as it can, I'm going to ramp up the heat, I'm going to buy a Twin Star and let that roll and add oxygen to the tank, and we're just going to make this, agitate the surface and everything. But you don't have to do that. You can take it slow, and you can just kind of go through this, let it do its thing, test it, make sure you're good. And I'll add all these links down below, so you don't have to just take my word for it. You can see for yourself how it all goes and learn, because that's how I learned. I read a lot, and I looked at what I needed to know and what was important, and what people were just arguing on the internet about. So it's important to me that everyone doesn't just take my word for it, but they go and they see that I'm right, or maybe I'm wrong, and they're able to distinct that for themselves. But this is the nitrogen cycle. They're your ammonia, worst, better, best. And these are your heroes of the tank, right? They colonize surfaces, they convert harmful waste products to less harmful products to even less harmful products that can be diluted with water changes or plants. And they only reach the needs of the aquarium. So more filters doesn't mean you have more bacteria. It just means that you have more room for mechanical filtration and stuff. But they reach the need of the waste, and they won't go any more, and that's it. Just because you move cycled media over to a new tank doesn't mean that it's cycled. It just means that there's some bacteria that can do the job. So this is why people that even advanced people will do this. They'll take a bag of media from one tank and they'll be like, boom, my tank is cycled. But that's not the case. It just means there's some bacteria that can do the job, but can it do the job for what you wanted? Like the load of the fish, however much ammonia source is going to be in that tank. Like you could put in one big cichlid, and then that dude will just poop a lot, and that small bag of bacteria that was right here is just not ready for that. So this is why I think it's important to test water. And you can always, even if you don't want to buy a test kit yourself, a lot of stores and companies like Petco or PetSmart, you can bring a sample of your water to their store and they'll test it for you and they'll tell you what's happening with it. And they're really helpful. And a lot of these stores are getting better at explaining kind of this part right here. And I wanted to explain not just the nitrogen cycle and make that easy to comprehend, but also the nitro bros, things about them, how they prefer, their temperature ranges, their, how they colonize, what they do, they adhere to surfaces, right? They use oxygen, they're great at their job, rod-shaped, Chemoautotrophs, all that good stuff. So this is the nitrogen cycle, and this is the nitro bros, and this is getting to know your bros, the heroes of your aquarium, and the guys that are doing the job that you never see happen because they're so tiny, but they're so very important. And I just hope that this helps a lot of people understand this easier and kind of help out. And if there's any questions, you can always ask in the comment section. I'll answer those questions the best I can. I'll always link sources and information in the description so anyone can go out there and learn as well themselves and figure it out as best they want to. And the most important thing is to have fun with this. This doesn't have to be like a grueling science project or like, oh man, so much like bacteria and like chemicals. This is ridiculous. It's nothing crazy like that. They're literally going to do it themselves without you having to do much, but just kind of monitor. And the most important thing is that make sure that the tank, when you have a tank, is at this stage before you add a fish into it. Is my belief system at this. I like to make sure that even if you don't have to test all this, maybe you get to this point, you just test this and you're like, okay, it's been a while, maybe doing the job, I've been adding ammonia or something. Well, nitrates are good. I added ammonia yesterday. It's been converted to nitrates by today. Boom, I got a cycled aquarium that's ready for X amount of fish. So I add a little bit of fish at a time and let them know they're good. Check ammonia again, make sure it's all being converted. And then add a little bit more over time and let that bacteria build. So kind of like a, let's say you have 10 fish and your bacteria kind of reaches this point, right? But you want to add more fish. Well, you don't want to just add 10 more fish and make it doubled up out of nowhere because your bacteria won't double up immediately. It'll have to reach that point. So adding just 10, twice as much of the stock if there is, it'll kind of crash your cycle and it'll have to try and grow enough bacteria to reach that point. So this is why, let's say you have 10 fish and you have this much bacteria. You add maybe 2 to 5 fish, and then that kind of adds a little bit of a gap that the bacteria has to reach, but they can do that, and then boom, you've reached that point, everyone's fine, you don't have a crash, and then you can add maybe 2 to 5 more fish. Now you're up here, and that's a safe way to add more fish without harming anyone or suddenly overbearing the bacteria. But have fun with this. I'll answer your questions. Like I said, this is not as hard as people think it is, or as ridiculously science over people's heads. It's just that they're on surfaces. They take water in. Water has this. Make it that. Water change. Goodbye. And this is what you look for when you're cycling it. This is what they are. What they look like. I mean, obviously my amazing drawing helps you see that. And then this is what's being converted. And this is it. This is the whole thing. So in this next clip, I'll show you what I did to start this system. I poured in a lot of bacteria, knowing that there would be die-off, knowing that I got it from an Amazon vendor. So although I bought Dr. Tim's, I know that it probably wasn't all alive and doing good because I got it off Amazon and it was cheaper, and that's fine. I know, but like that was a choice that I made. But that's really it. Like I'll show you what I did to start it all and how I pulled out filter socks because you pour all the bacteria in, so when you pull out filter socks, it's to make sure that they're not getting caught into that. They can establish themselves, and then after 48 hours, you can put the socks back in because they're not free floating in the water column anymore. They should have adhered to surfaces by now. And that's it. It's not bad. I hope this wasn't too much, but I'll go ahead and roll that clip for you guys now. So for these three, it's just bacteria, and the point of it is to colonize the aquarium. There are dosing directions, like, you can use this much for however much in the tank. I see no problem in overdosing, or I don't feel like I have to choose one brand or another. They'll die off and they'll meet the requirement of however much ammonia is in the tank. So when a colony establishes, it'll only be enough to convert whatever amount of ammonia is in the aquarium. So from there, I'm just going to start pouring. I'm going to pour into the tank and into the filter bathroom area. So since I'm doing this area right here, it's convenient, that was really good. Since all of the media is in here, I'm going to go ahead and just pour this entire one down here. Kind of get it. Good. And then some up here. Same thing. Straight bacteria. And then same thing with this. Ooh, big dogs. And that's it. So it'll be cloudy for a little bit. The point of it is to let them colonize the aquarium, get everything going, jump starting things. So since I put ammonia in there already, what I'm going to be doing is regularly testing using a liquid test kit, preferably chest strips. Although they're conveniently quick, they're not as accurate. So I'll be using the liquid test kit, the API master test kit, and monitoring how long it takes the ammonia to go, and like if the ammonia is still present. Once I see ammonia hitting 0, and then I see nitrite starting to pick up, I'll know that the cycle's begun and starting being converted over. And then I can expect nitrite to be spiking and go really high and then start to come down, and then I'll see nitrate go up. But I should at that point have 0 ammonia, 0 nitrite, and then a good amount of nitrate. And then from then on, it's about reducing nitrate. But when you have 0, 0, and then preferably low nitrate, so you can consider your tank cycled. And that's all I'm doing. I remove this filter sock down here just so that nothing's getting caught up in there. I'll leave that off for about 48 hours according to Dr. Tim's instructions, and then I'll go from there. But that's pretty much it. That's just how I cycle fishless. So here's some eye candy for this outro. So basically, I'm cycling that tank so I can get this little buddy over here and all of these white cloud mountain minnows into that tank, and a bigger school of these minnows as well, and potentially some shrimp. We'll see what happens. But first you have to cycle it, so I make sure that I don't put any of these guys in any harm or danger, and then they can have a fun, enjoying home. And one thing I want to mention, give credit to, is that this was my, first axolotl tank. It's a 15-gallon. The lights are only really on right now for displaying. Typically they'd be dimmer because of him. But thanks to Custom Aquariums, talking to them, emailing them sponsoring a lot of this, it's been awesome. I was able to take a 15-gallon aquarium that was the biggest size tank I can have in a college dorm, and now I'm upgrading it to what I'm referring to as the Dragon's Den. to a much larger system with crazy filtration that'll be like a heaven for this little dude right here. That is the star of the show, and everyone that I know loves him. So thank you to Custom Aquariums for this project series. I hope you guys are enjoying this especially. And, you know, it's coming to an end. There's only a couple more videos left, but I really look forward to doing some future business with those guys too. They're so cool. If anybody ever wants a custom aquarium and they want it done right and great quality, please use those links below and hit those guys up, because they are so friendly, so helpful, and they do a great job with their work. But thanks for watching this far. I hope it wasn't too much of a crazy video or anything like that. It was really easy to follow. I didn't use any seeded media, so I literally did all of that I just showed you, and I just finished it. And in 2 more weeks, I'll show you guys putting these guys in, I think. So we'll see how that goes. Thanks for watching. Bye.